All
Happy
right.
Monday, mother lovers.
All you mother lovers out there, welcome to
Yes.
Divine Masculine Mondays. Um, so let's get started. Today was Columbus Day, and I think
Yes.
there is there was a push to not honor Columbus and rather to honor the indigenous people of
Yes.
this land. So we're gonna send out lots of love today to all the indigenous people.
So happy
Uh,
Indigenous Peoples Day. Let's put that in right now. Create that. New York State actually made that official recently. I'm very proud of my home state for that. And just want to say wherever you are to honor the people who came before us, the original natives of this land. We're so grateful for it.
yes.
And we wanted to do I had this impulse to take the week off, right? We had a guest lined up, this incredible divine feminine coach. And John, I reached out to my brother John today and I said, you want to do this? It's Indigenous Peoples Day. Do we let ourselves rest? And John said, no, let's talk about this. Let's bring this to the forefront. I think right away that felt right. Like this beautiful impulse that we actually get to a great way to honor it, especially I know for myself that I'm taking on as a white man of privilege is to talk about it and hopefully learn and lead by example, that we can all be really proud and own our history and where we came from and learn about that as a source to empower us and to empower the people whose voice was taken away by people like my ancestors. So I actually have direct ties. I'll share this like live publicly. As I learned my family history, I have direct ties to the Trail of Tears, to men who led the Trail of Tears, who did the violence, and a General James White, who I'm related to, from Knoxville, Tennessee, he was a general in the army, and he led that and helped create that genocide. And I'm sure I have some. My family on the other side, on my father's side, was quite poor. So really, really, really just dirt poor, and helped a lot of minorities in that sense because they also didn't have much, but they did have privilege. So but I do want to honor, I'm sure there's slave ownership in my ancestry as well. But one thing my ancestors always did well, and actually my not my ancestors, my family of origin, my direct family has really helped me understand the land and honor the native people. So Tennessee, Chattanooga, where I am in the Hudson Valley, these are all places of native people, as most of America, right? That's why I've learned Native Indians don't like to be called Native Americans, because America was created by white men who came and robbed and destroyed and raped and pillaged and killed, and then called it something else, right? So to honor the people of this land, the Native Indians, Indigenous people, I wanted to start by just sharing that and clearing that, and as just witness to knowing my truth, and that I'm here to learn.
That's beautiful, man. Um, I think right now in this world, not many people will take the responsibility or just yeah, just own up to a lineage of you know pain that's been caused.
Mm.
So I yeah appreciate you for sharing that. And yeah, today for me, we were immigrants moving to the U.S. and our parents left Vietnam for us to come here and have a beautiful life. But it's weird how I never would have imagined that I would be studying indigenous cultures.
Mm.
And in recent months, I've just been presented with so many people, shamans and healers, that are teaching me about the different uh, indigenous regions and the medicine that they bring. So without looking for it, it actually looks for me. It found me.
Mm.
So I'm learning so much about different medicines, different healing, and how can we preserve some of that wisdom and knowledge.
Mm.
So yeah, so I'm just really excited to work more and more every day with um, people that are keeping that alive. Yeah,
That's so beautiful, John, and that's a great way to honor that as well. To work with the people who are keeping that alive. and help nurture that conversation. And you've always been a source of inspiration for me for that as well. I also want to just mention here and give a shout out to Jeffrey MCP, who said we call it First Nations. So I want to honor Jeffrey and all people of First Nations. I've been taught by different leaders like to be called different things, but that's something we can agree on is to speak of the First Nations people. So to honor the Indigenous people, the people of this land, of Indigenous people everywhere, just want to start opening that conversation and unveiling the truth and saying, it's a lot of history that's skipped over. We definitely learn about a little bit in the South. I'm curious, John, you mentioned, being the son of Vietnam refugees, for lack of a better, well, anyway, you can create it however you want. You didn't say that, but what was that like coming to America for you, and then studying Indigenous people? And
So I was born here. My parents were refugees, and so I was born as an American, and all I knew was America, which is like very modern Western world.
Mhm.
And just going into the yogic path and running into people that are like will invite you to plant ceremonies or sweat lodges, and you get to meet people from uh, the native lands, and they're able to talk to you and give you history and culture. Um, it's really unique because I think growing up, you think there's only one way, there's only one type of medicine that works. Um, and then you learn there's so many other methods. Um, so for me, my spiritual journey began with plant medicine, which was ayahuasca. And ayahuasca is an indigenous um, medicine. It comes from the Amazon rainforest, which isn't, where I'm living at the moment, like Texas. But there is something to be said about indigenous wisdom and the culture and how they believed in like the calendars and just having rituals and ceremony. I'm learning that I'm incorporating that more into my daily life, this modern life, and learning to balance the old and the new, to just connect to your present moment. It's like is using these tools and this wisdom.
Mm. That's beautiful. And the design on your shirt actually reminds me of patterns I saw in my ayahuasca experience
Yeah,
of
this is drawn
tapping
by
into the colors of the universe.
it is. It's yeah, this is a yantra, which is like a kind of like a mandala that
Mhm.
a friend of mine drew, and it's what she sees in her meditations. So
Wow,
pretty
that's
cool.
really powerful. And so, John, you actually point out some great tools, and one of the things I want to talk about today is how can um, people now, especially people who know maybe they have a sordid past, maybe they're just born here, um, not, their families are from somewhere else, like you were. What are things you think you point out some ways that we can actually connect to the Indigenous people and learn from them? And one of those things you mentioned was plant medicine is a really strong way. So for someone who hasn't ever experienced that before and said, I just want to understand the roots more of the culture, like honor the people who are here. What are some ways that you think are like direct, easy access tools for that? Whether it be plant medicine or anything else.
There's basic learning. Like you can always Google, or you can just like go get jewelry, or little things like that. One of the biggest things that changed my life was going to a sweat lodge. You
Hmm.
can Google that. There's sweat lodges everywhere. Um, there's two groups that host them in Houston, and basically they create a dome. And this is after Native American tradition of creating a dome, and then they burn these big stones, and then they place in the middle of the dome, and
And the
then
stones are actually on burning coals, right? They've
yeah,
been heated.
they've been burning on coals or in stacks of wood. They just like make a fire, and then you go in and they pour just water on top of the stones, and you're inside of an airtight dome. You're just sweating as they're singing different mantras or songs from indigenous cultures, and you'll get to set intentions and do ceremony with them, and you just learn so much.
Mm.
Um, Beyond learning, you're healing as well, and everyone gets to state an intention that they're releasing in the sweat lodge, as well as something that they're manifesting or connecting to. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way to really connect and be integrated and immersed into something like that. It sounds crazy, but it's actually not. It's just basically like going into a sauna with someone from the First Nations talking to you about uh, about honoring the land that we live in,
Mm.
and honoring the water that we drink and swim in and that we bathe in, like honoring the water, honoring
Yes.
the sunlight, the fire, and then just honoring our ancestors. And they just go
Mm.
through this process, and they're speaking in English. Um, so it's really cool
Yeah.
to experience.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful. I highly recommend that, even if you're weary of plant medicine. A
And
sweat.
this is completely not plant medicine at all. It's
Right.
just
Exactly.
hot water is poured on a stone that makes steam. It's literally a sauna,
Yeah.
but they'll burn like sage and different things like that, and
And
copal.
occasionally, maybe occasionally open the tent.
Mhm.
um, or the
Yeah.
dome. Also, if you're in the Hudson Valley, if you're in New York State or anywhere around Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, I'm connected to some really, really powerful shamans and leaders in the plant medicine First Nations ceremonial work here. And all you have to do is send me a message and I'd be happy to connect to you. And anywhere you are, you can look that up and really learn from people. I took a class in New York, even when I was at NYU in acting school. I took a class on it was cultural studies. It was like a graduate class, but we got to meet with different leaders of all the different represented communities in New York City, including the First Nations people, and really got incredible education there. And another thing that I love to think about, or say to people, if think about the name of the city or town where you were born and actually look that up, because chances are that name is of First Nations descent. I grew up in
Yeah.
Chattanooga, Tennessee, in Cherokee Valley, right? So there's actually a Cherokee Indian reservation, and um, as not understanding and ignorant as one of my uh, grandfathers was, he really did not appreciate other races, but well, that's a construct. Other people who look different from him, right? But one thing he did do is he really helped educate me about Cherokee, because he saw how drawn I was to it. Because it just didn't. It's like, well, who are the people here? Where did we get this from? You know, as a kid, you're like, why? And you get closer to the source, and it's so powerful. And I could feel that as a kid. And I'm sure, like, I could see John as like this old soul as a kid, like sitting by a tree, just knowing. I feel like, John, you have this knowing, eternal
We
wisdom
all have that.
of
We all
honoring
have
the
this
land.
thing.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that too, right? It's not just like some people have it and some don't. It's you can definitely connect to it. And I had several clients reach out to me today who are really, really struggling. Sometimes days off or having a big weekend can lead this like down or depression. And the one thing I just keep telling people to do is remind my clients is you can't think your way into right action. You can only act your way into right thinking. And the best thing to do is just get out into nature, even if it's freezing or raining or whatever it is. If it feels miserable, just to be out in it is so healing. You're immediately giving over whatever you're dealing with to the land, and the land can handle it. And that's the incredible thing about learning from our ancestors and First Nations people is, before we even got here, there's people who were honoring the land and had ceremonial work that works, right? Because all they had was the elements, and there's so much to learn from the elements. So connecting to fire, air, water, earth, all of those things. For me, sometimes it's just taking my shoes and socks off outside, walking around in the yard, the grass, sitting at a tree. But just taking a moment today to pause and think about that, I think is a great way to start.
Yeah, the indigenous people, for me, they teach us to honor the land. So simple. And I'm looking out my window now and I see um, downtown Houston right from my room, and I could see all the buildings, which they're beautiful. Yet I realized that the Western mindset has been to stack as many buildings next to each other as possible,
Mm,
eliminating the nature aspect of what we originally had.
mm,
And the indigenous people, they lived together in villages, but they also had proximity and they had trees in between the houses, and there's just enough plant life to give them proper oxygen. Oftentimes people that live in cities wonder why they're feeling anxiety and stress, and maybe it's because we're taking all the trees away from our land and we're not getting the right oxygen. And
mm.
we're getting air conditioned canned air, which is good. It feels great on the skin, but really, how better is it better than actual fresh air outside? And then if you live in the city, maybe it's better than the fresh air outside because the fresh air outside is very polluted.
Yeah, the
So
air quality is going to continue to get worse for the next 30 years. So there's work to be done.
well, it could get worse, or we could be the change that reverses that paradigm. And I feel
Well, we
like,
will, but we can't reverse it for another 30 years from now, right now. If we start now,
you think so?
well, that's been the scientific evidence that's come out. So whatever's happening with climate
Mm.
change is going to keep happening for the next 30 years. But if we start now, we can start changing things then. But we can clean
I
up
feel
the
like
air
I
around you now
yeah,
by doing things like planting some trees,
yeah.
right? That can
I feel like we've
immediately
already
give you more
been doing
oxygen.
that reverse. And I know it's like we should start doing it now or something, but I think now more than ever we're at that bell curve where the pendulum is switching the other way now.
Mhm.
So um, I know so many friends that are now looking into converting into a smart car or
Mhm.
hybrid to reduce
Solar.
those emissions, solar power energy. Some people are just you know moving out of the country even.
Mhm.
I know someone moving out of the country and living in the jungle soon. So
I do too. There's also a
yeah.
great company doing crop sharing now. And actually, and this is pretty much what the future you can count on looking like, is that yards will be converted to crop sharing. And people can actually sort of companies can rent space in your yard, and they'll actually have like a robot or a drone that will probably come and actually gather things from your yard. And you're part of a local CSA that's all can eventually be operated by robots for the most part. I
I
mean,
like that.
Amazon's already putting out these things, but it's, one thing you can do is you can start turning the land you do have into renewable sources. So it sustainable is no longer going to work. It because we're on track to have 1 billion climate change refugees in the next 30 years. So doing things like planting trees, starting to resource your own stuff that can be renewable now, right, is going to be absolutely the way. And you've got most of the like 80%, 70% of college students are going into climate renewable energy kinds of activities now, and a lot of companies are dealing with that. And we just had this massive oil spill, Huntington Beach near LA, hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil. So there's still being, oil still being used, and it's not needed. So uh it's really about creating biodiversity, and that's a great way you can look that up too. I went and taught at a Waldorf school across the street on a farm to learn about biodiversity, and actually there's I learned from kids about it, and you can teach your children about that too. And that's a great way to honor land as well. And we could go probably talk more about climate change, but I do want to mention something. We have a loyal listener here, Jeffrey, who said, there's a street in Toronto. This is sort of going back to honoring the people and the land from which we come, but there's a street in Toronto named Dundas, which has been voted for a name change, which will cost tens of millions of dollars to change. I'm guessing Dundas is a name of probably a man who bought it. And then there's a university that's changed its name to X for right now, which is really cool. So, for instance, the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, the university in my hometown, was called the Mocs. It was like, go Mocs. And it stood for Moccasins. And actually it's not okay to call a school that, right? Because it was built on land that was originally run and no longer has the First Nations people there. So they kept the name the Mocs, but they changed the name of the mascot to the Mockingbirds. And that was almost 20 years ago. So the fact that there's still schools and places dealing with that, it's not too late. There really is opportunities to see who the local people are and to create, you can create a local community to rename a street and raise money that way, and get on a board, or just see like who the people were in your land and if there's any meetups around it, or educational things as well.
I wonder why it costs so much to change the name.
I would guess in Toronto, if it's a main big street, that it's got to go all over. And then there's probably, I don't know, legislature, legal, all the tracking of where that street name exists all over the world changes too. I don't know. That's wild.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it has to.
Yeah.
That's something Toronto gets to be responsible for. I'm sure they make tons and tons of money off of, very poor people there, and in a big city, like a lot of urban environments do. So there's an opportunity to get responsible for it. Another thing I learned, I don't have it here, but my didgeridoo, if you play instruments, also learning where they came from. So I play a banjo, and I actually, almost every show, I talk about where the banjo came from. I talk about it being from Africa, brought over, by slaves and reappropriated by white people. So that's one thing I actually teach the origins of instruments, and I play a didgeridoo as well. So that came from the Indigenous people of Australia, the Aborigines, and they use it to connect to dreams and to spirits, and to the land that they worship as well.
I will tell you this: it sounds like we're looking at a lot of negative things about how the white man or whoever is taking over the indigenous, but I feel like this moment now, this year, this hour, I feel like the world is honoring the indigenous people more than they ever have in the past. And I could tell you, out of my 10 closest friends, I think all of them somehow honor the indigenous people in the way they teach. They incorporate their teachings, like my yoga teacher friends and my healers. They're using actual indigenous tools, Palo Santo, plant medicines, and the healing effect is so big now. And 2 years ago, I don't think I would even have two friends that worked with indigenous tools and wisdom and method. And now I have friends that have decks of tarot cards that they're oracle cards that are all indigenous symbolism and lessons and learnings. It's just mind blowing that we have so much access now to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like people that are the vegans that are pushing the vegan thing, so that we're not taking up a lot of land with cows and huge fields of agriculture. In a way, I don't know if the vegans are even on the same, we got to honor the indigenous people, but the fact that they're saying let's reduce all of this wasted space.
Let's honor the animals that are here, not just
honor the
create
animals
them
and
for consumption and destruction, right?
Let the land breathe a little.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I do see a huge trend and a pendulum swing in the positive direction of honoring indigenous cultures.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out, John. And I think just the fact that we're talking about it is great too. I mean, one thing I will say is I mentioned this history and it can sound like dark or negative, but it's for me, it's been empowering to learn the truth and to talk about those things. And if we do use those things in yoga culture and in Western culture, they're easily appropriated, right? So, or reappropriated. So I would say it's just like, if you're using Palo Santo, learn about it. if you're using a singing bowl, learn about where it came from. Many of those are hand hammered from someone in Tibet that has used it directly in healing, for thousands of generations. So I just think that for me has been a really great way to honor uh, the people who brought us these things, right? And to teach it, even yoga, from India, and to talk about it, right? And that's one thing I really honor and see in you, John. So I appreciate you talking about the people who are doing something and how we can nurture that more and look at what we are doing and what is the positive stuff that we're doing now. Um, Jeffrey said here, also again, thank you so much for being part of this dialogue, Jeffrey. And we encourage anyone and everyone listening before or after to be part of the dialogue and ask us questions, send us messages. Jeffrey MCP said Uganda and Rwanda have incorporated ecotourism to protect their gorillas. So that's really cool way that that they're really helping with the land. Because we know a lot of species are facing extinction. So there's really positive things that are being done and that we can do. Speaking of plant medicine, and I've been talking and thinking a lot about fungi this weekend. I took friends into nature. My band had our first show together in 6 months. We went to this incredible, played on this at Beer Naked Brewery, which is on this beautiful mountain in Vermont. And we took our bandmates who are close friends into nature and hiking, and we did some pillaging and foresting for fungi, and we found all types of incredible species, and just got to talk about psilocybin and all the incredible effects of this, and that we're actually breathing spores all the time, no matter what. We're interacting with fungi, we're interacting with mushrooms and things like that. So there's really incredible healing energy in plant medicine to actually get reconnected to the land. And either way, in just plants, like eating your own plants, meeting your local farmers, growing your own. And one of the things, why did I mention this? Seeing these yesterday, I think I was just thinking about the importance of getting connected to nature and bringing friends and community together, and how we can do things to protect our land. So there's just plant medicine, again, is a great way to get connected to nature and learning about like what's actually growing in your area. And even in living in New York City, I learned that in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, there's fungi for pillaging tours that you can do. So that's really, really amazing too.
In
So
New
you
York?
can learn about the land. Yeah. You can go eat
What?
mushrooms in the middle of the city in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of great ways to honor the people, and there's and I mentioned, this is why I mentioned fungi, because they're helping study fungi to clean up things like oil spills and to help clean up to soak
Chernobyl.
up things that aren't working well. And
In
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, the mushrooms basically ate up all the toxic uh, radiation or whatever that was left from the bomb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was able to regenerate and basically recompost that land so that nothing was living there for years, for decades, or not decades, decades. And they decided to put mushrooms there and it would repair the land. So just imagine whatever toxins you have in your body, whether it's emotional toxic patterns or physically toxins growing in your body. Imagine if mushrooms can do that in Chernobyl, what do you think it can do for your body? Like if there's a cancer or anything. So yeah, the beautiful power of plants. It's amazing. Yeah, they're our best friends.
Oh, and the other thing we also, yeah, for sure. It's so important. And that's why we took our friends to the farmer's market. We walked over to this farm and hung out with animals and learned about their process and the people who own it and what they do with the animals, and just like interacting with them. And it's so incredible just to get to know the source of that. And whether you eat animals or not, it's great to connect to them just to learn more about like where your food does come from, or the ecosystems around. And I have a great friend, Matt Johnston, who's working here to make the Hudson Valley, one of the first like renewable energy sources in America. That like for the whole, his dream is for this whole valley, like 100 miles in every direction, 100 cubic miles above and below. So we're getting responsible for the air up above and the earth below, because if those things aren't well, we can't be either, because we're breathing them and living on them, right? So it's so important to take care of our land, and to just to talk about this, mention it to a friend today. Wish someone happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Some people may not even know that it's been renamed that today.
Mm. Okay. I didn't catch the last part you said, man.
Oh, just to wish someone a happy Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yeah. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to you.
And if you have anything you'd like to share, if you've been watching and you have conversations about this, you have sources, feel free to post those or send us a message, and we're happy to share any resources as well. And I'm just grateful to be part of this conversation. I think this is a great place to wrap up, unless you have something that you want to add to it, John, or some more medicine you want to offer today before we go.
No medicine at the moment. Just check out nature if you can. It's a pretty cool thing out there. Just get a little bit of nature in your body today, or on your body. And yeah, my invitation for you is to just go ahead and touch a tree if you can, and maybe give thanks to the trees for giving us oxygen. Give thanks to the land that provides this foundation to live in a home and to work somewhere, and also just give thanks. I will give thanks to people before me that that honored the land and taught us to have a relationship with the land, because it's like that Shel Silverstein book, The Giving Tree. So it's a lot like that, and the more thankful and grateful we can be for the land will provide us more and more. As long as just be grateful. So
yes,
that's all I have today. Amen.
That's exactly what
actually,
I wanted to say. I wanted to lead a meditation and say all of those things, and you just did. So I just want to invite everyone to take a deep breath, though, inside of what John just shared. Let that land. Take a deep breath, breathe all of that in. And then imagine just exhaling love out to everything and everyone around you. And
we'll
then
close
lastly, send some love back to yourself.
I want to say aho in closing.
Aho.
So aho is a native First Nation word for truth is spoken. So it's a greeting, it's a salutation, it's just a way to honor the moment. So
aho. Thank you for that,
aho.
John.
Yes. Namaste, everybody.
Namaste. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you same time, same place next week. And if there's something that you would like to hear us talk about, just send us a message. We would be happy to share on that. So happy Indigenous Peoples Day to you and everyone, for those here who came before us. Peace.